It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com and get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You can also get that book up on Amazon.com. But if you want an autographed copy, go to emailrevealer.com. We can also do a lot of stuff for you, like asset searches, locates, locate current employment. You can trace email addresses back and get your name and address from an anonymous email address, and catch people cheating online by tracing their emails back to online dating websites. OppermanReport.com is our website for the radio show, and we have there a special member section. It's exclusive content that we only play exclusively for members, but there's also a lot of content on there too. Court documents we get, videos. We just got a video, copies of the videos of the search warrant when the police were executing the search warrant on the Jeffrey Epstein mansion down in Florida, and we put that up in the members section. I believe we just put up there too one of Donald Trump's previous sexual harassment lawsuits that you don't hear about up on the news. We got a copy of that, and we put that up on there as well. If I didn't, I'll have to talk to Sean, because I've read it, and it may not be up there yet. So Sean's uploading a whole bunch of stuff to the Sean from strongmanmusic.com is uploading a ton of documents and stuff to the Opperman Report document section. Got a really interesting show for you today. We have Kurt Haskell. He formerly ran for Congress in 2012. But also, he was an eyewitness to the underwear bomber. Okay, so, and also too, now he's become like kind of an expert on spotting these kind of shady operations, and people refer to as false flags. So, Mr. Haskell, are you there?
I'm here. How are you, Ed?
Very good, very good. Thank you so much. Now,
sure.
Tell us a little about yourself. Who is Kurt Haskell?
Who's Kurt Haskell? Okay. Well, who I am now is very different from who I used to be. I kind of look at my life in two parts: before Christmas Day 2009 and after. So before Christmas Day 2009, I was an attorney practicing law in Detroit with my wife, who also was an attorney, and just living our lives, going about our business. And then suddenly we were thrust into the limelight because we were on the plane with the underwear bomber, and I just happened to see some things in relation to that event that would change my life and the life of my wife too, that would then lead me to a two-year long 2,000-hour investigation that I put into that case, the underwear bomber case, and then it subsequently led me to run for United States Congress in 2012, and when I lost, it led us to become expatriates and leave the United States and move to Costa Rica. So that event substantially changed our lives. So who I am today is just an average guy living my life in Costa Rica, much different than who I used to be pre-Christmas Day 2009. An average guy, though, whose eyes are wide open in relation to false flag attacks. And I feel I learn a lot and can spot them pretty easily now.
Now, do you practice law in Costa Rica?
No, I do not. No, those days are done. I'm just an average guy here, living my life out in the jungle.
Okay.
Literally in the jungle.
We have Tarzan on the line.
Right, exactly. Monkeys roam through my yard.
Really? Well,
yes.
Aren't monkeys dangerous? They can rip your face off, no?
No, not the kind we have here. They're very small and pretty shy and harmless. They stay pretty high up in the trees and just They come to the yard to eat bananas and mangoes pretty much, but they're pretty harmless.
Okay, do they throw stuff at you? Like, I know they masturbate too. Do they do that kind of stuff?
No, I mean, once in a while they
Really?
might throw something at you, but probably the bigger danger is them maybe peeing on you.
Really?
But they're pretty harmless, you know?
Okay. Well, yeah, you got a nice personality. I guess you get along with the monkeys over there.
Oh, I love animals. Yeah, all kinds.
So, yeah, some people are like that. The animals just naturally come to them, you know? Now, what about when you ran for Congress? That was in Michigan?
Yeah, in Michigan. I ran for the 7th District in 2012.
Okay.
And, that's back when, I thought I could change things because I was coming off my 2,000 hour-long investigation of the underwear bomber case where, I realized that the government was corrupt, the media corrupt, the court system corrupt, et cetera, et cetera. It was a real eye-opener. So I thought, well, hey, maybe I can get into Washington and maybe one honest person in Washington can make some positive change. So I had never run for any office at all. I decided I would run for United States congressman. And that was an eye-opening event, too, because then I got to see how corrupt the political system was, too. Because what happened, there was no one running against incumbent Tim Walberg on the Democrat side, Tim Walberg being a Republican. And this was March 1st, and you had to get into the race by the first week of May. So I talked and asked people, around the Democratic meetings, and nobody was getting in the race. So I put my hat in as the only Democrat challenger to Tim Walberg on the Republican side. And I was expecting the Democrat Party to support me. They did not. They did not, probably because of, me being out in the public so much from the underwear bomber case, being essentially a federal government whistleblower, what I was. They didn't want me in Washington doing the same thing. So what they did, immediately after I declared I was running, the head of the Democratic National Committee flew to Michigan and met with a former Republican congressman named Joe Schwartz. Joe Schwartz was not only a Republican, remember I was running as a Democrat, but he didn't even live in our district. And the head of the Democratic National Committee flew to Michigan, met with Joe Schwartz, and asked him to switch parties and move into the district, and offered him $20,000 to do so to run against me in the primary. So that was my first kind of whoa moment that politics are corrupt too. It's not really Democrats versus Republicans. So what happened next is Joe Schwartz said, "I'll think about it." And time went on and on and on and on, and you had to get into the race by the first week of May. And on May 1st, with only a week to go, Joe Schwartz said, "I'm not running." So again, this left me as the only Democrat running in the primary. So what does the state Democrat Party do? They get ahead of one of the county Democrat parties in the district, and they offer to get all his signatures to get him on the ballot in the final week. And you needed, I think it was either 1,000 signatures or 2,000. I can't remember exactly. But he wouldn't have been able to do it himself. So the state Democratic Party got all his signatures for him to get on the primary ballot to run against me. So then what happens? It's kind of interesting. Hopefully I'm not.
No. This is.
Hopefully I'm not boring some people, but it's kind of interesting how big politics plays out. And this was all new to me. So I beat him in the primary badly. I beat him 66-33, 2-1 margin. Just crushed him. And so now again, I'm the only Democrat running against Tim Walberg. He won his primary, the incumbent Tim Walberg. And I expect the full Democrat Party to get behind me. And they never talked to me again. The state and the national parties never spoke to me one time after the primary. It was just utterly ridiculous. It reminds me of what Donald Trump is going through these days, of how the Republican Party's kind of turning against him. And this was just a huge eye-opener for me, because I always thought it Democrats support their people and Republicans support theirs. But this was a real eye-opener for me that it's not about that. They don't want honest people in Washington. They don't want whistleblowers there. They want yes people that will take orders and do what they say. So that was kind of my eye-opener. First, I had the eye-opener to false flags from the underwear bomber, then the corruption in the court case, and then in the media, and then right after in politics. So I got hit with this quadruple whammy all within 3 years. And by the time the election came around and not getting any support from the state or national parties in a very winnable district, and with being outspent 10-1, I still only lost 53 to 43%. So I ran a pretty good campaign, I thought, without that support and being outspent 10-1. But I did lose. But that was a real eye opener too, and kind of interesting. You don't know these sort of things happen, in big politics. Although this year, some of it's kind of out in the open with the corruption in the Democrat National Committee being on full display, and then also the Republican Committee with what they're doing to Trump. But anyway,
who was head of the? Who was head
kind
of
of droning on?
No, you're fine. Who was head of the DNC when they screwed you like this?
The head of the DNC was Steve Israel, a congressman out of, I think he was out of New York City.
Yeah, very familiar name.
And by the way, Steve Israel, to this day, has never spoken one word to me, ever. Nothing. But he was able to get on a plane and fly to my state and offer a Republican congressman from another district $20,000 to switch parties and move into my district to run against me. It's so ridiculous.
Now, let me ask you this. When you were in Detroit, what kind of law did you practice?
Mostly I was a trial attorney where I was in court. We had an office of 4 attorneys, and I did all of our trials. So that was mostly my job, no matter what kind of case. If it went to trial, I was the one doing the trial. So, but, I did because of that, I did a lot of different kinds of law that the other attorneys practice, including divorces, Social Security, disability cases. I did some criminal. I did some tax law, estate planning, probate, and I did a lot of bankruptcy too. So I practiced quite a few different areas of law, but mostly I was doing trials.
Well, now, as a trial attorney, didn't you have exposure to this kind of politics and realize how rigged things were?
No, not at all. I thought everything was legit. This was kind of just thrown on me, when we haven't really gotten into what happened in the underwear bombing case. But I was just kind of thrown into it on accident by being an eyewitness. I had no idea, not even the slightest idea, any of this stuff went on.
Now, are the judges there elected or appointed?
The state judges are elected, and the federal court judges are appointed.
Okay, that's interesting.
And I was in both. When I would do tax or bankruptcy, I would be in federal court, and everything else I was pretty much in state court. So I was in both of them.
Okay, and you didn't experience like the politics, getting these judges elected and donating to their campaigns, and
but not this sort of corruption where your party works against you.
Okay.
It's like what we're seeing with Bernie Sanders getting the shaft and Trump getting the shaft by their own parties. Yeah. But this sort of thing wasn't on full display like it is this year back in 2012. It was really shocking to me. I always thought Democrats would support the Democrat candidate and Republicans would support the Republican candidate, but that's not how it works.
Yeah, like you said, they'll actually pay your opponent. They'll hire people to run against you. It's really
it's very corrupt. Very.
people have no idea about that kind of stuff.
Yes.
All right. Now, how did you? First of all, underwear bomber flight. Where did this flight take place? From where to where?
The flight was from Amsterdam to Detroit. It was our connecting flight. We were on vacation in Uganda on a safari. And we flew first to Nairobi, Kenya, and then to Amsterdam. And it's kind of funny. Before we get into the underwear bomber incident, when we were in Nairobi, just before flying to Amsterdam, there was a man looking out the window of the airport, and the window was open, and he was on a cell phone, pointing at our plane, talking on the phone for an hour straight. And I told my wife, I'm like, I'm kind of concerned about this, that he might do something to our plane or whatever. And she said, you're crazy. What are the chances that we would get a terrorist on our plane? And I was like, yeah, you're right. Nothing's going to happen. And we flew to Amsterdam from Nairobi, and nothing happened.
Okay.
She was right until the very next flight from Amsterdam to Detroit, where I saw something else, amazingly. What happened there, the life-changing event for me.
Well, wait, did you switch planes, or was it you were on the same plane?
No, we switched planes. We got off,
okay.
And I remember we had breakfast in Amsterdam, and I didn't have any. I remember because it was, I think, one of the only times in my life I didn't leave a tip because I didn't have any cash. And then you know how they run the credit card machine, some of them don't have a line for a tip.
Right.
That's how it was, and I apologized to the waitress that I couldn't give her any money. She said that was fine. I don't know why I remember that, but I do, in Amsterdam. And we went down to our flight, gate E7, and checked in. It was Christmas Day, and a lot of people had heavy coats and a lot of packages, so there weren't two seats together anywhere where we could sit by each other. So we decided to sit on the floor by the gate. And my wife got out cards, and we started playing cards, gin rummy, I think. And she was shuffling. And I saw two people walk by while she was shuffling. I was just kind of looking around. One would look like an Indian man, maybe from India or Pakistan or somewhere over there, in a suit. And he was walking with an African, what I thought was a teenager, who was just had on jeans and a T-shirt, not dressed for winter at all. And they just kind of made an odd couple, so they kind of caught my eye. And they walked up to the counter, and the Indian man said, this man needs to board the flight, but he doesn't have a passport. And the girl at the counter said, well, he can't get on the flight without a passport. And then the Indian man said, we do this all the time, kind of arguing with her. And then she got on the phone, and she said, you need to go down the hall and talk to a manager. And then the two of them walked down this hallway by themselves, secure hallway where nobody else was allowed, and they just went in a side room.
Well, let me ask you a question now. When he was talking to the ticket agent, was he showing a badge or any kind of ID? Did he explain who he was?
No, he didn't show anything. He didn't explain who he was either. It was almost like she knew who he was because he said, we do this all the time. So it was almost, like they knew each other.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So they went down this secure hallway into a side room, and then I didn't think anything else of it. I just thought, oh, this guy's not going to get on the flight, whatever. I didn't think anything about it until about 8 hours later. We're starting our descent into Detroit, and what happened? I was watching the seatback monitor, watching our elevation. We're at about 20,000 feet, and the pilot comes on and says we're starting our descent into Detroit. Fine, whatever. And then a waitress or a stewardess walked by my seat. My wife had the window seat on the right, and I had the seat next to her, up against the aisle. And she said, something smells like smoke. And I looked up, and there was smoke coming about 7 rows up on the left side by the left window. There were a couple seats that were on fire, and they were smoking. And there was some commotion, and a man, I don't know where he came from, but he ran up and put another man in a headlock and hauled him into the first class section of the flight. And it was weird because they didn't say anything. There were no punches thrown. It was just kind of bizarre. You just kind of put him in a headlock and hauled him away.
Now, wait a second. Now, you could see this, the headlock?
Yeah.
Being, okay, now, was his pants on fire as he was being dragged?
I didn't see his pants because the seats were kind of high, so I couldn't see everything going on closer to the floor.
Now, was smoke traveling with
There
these two?
was smoke. There was smoke, and I was watching the fire mostly.
But the two guys traveling toward the front section, toward the first class, was there smoke traveling with them?
I can't say I was watching that.
Okay.
I just saw the headlock, and maybe out of the corner of my eye, he was hauling them off. I was more concerned with the fire.
Okay.
So our plane was on fire at 20,000 feet.
I hear you, man. I hear you.
Two seats were burning.
Yeah.
The flames were about 6 to 8 feet high, and they're going up the wall.
Really?
It was pretty bad.
Okay.
The floor was on fire. Yeah. So people are yelling and screaming, "Help! We need water!" Get a fire extinguisher. One person yelled "terrorist," which I thought was weird because there was no indication that this was a terrorist attack.
Right.
It could have been an electrical fire. It could have been anything. There was no fight. There was no yelling like, anything in Arabic or nothing. Nothing. It was weird. We didn't know it was a terrorist attack yet. So after about a minute, the fire was burning about a minute, which is a long time. One of the flight attendants got a fire extinguisher and ran over and put it out. And then the whole airplane was completely silent. And the pilot came on the loudspeaker and said, "We're going to do an emergency landing." And then instead of going slow into landing, we sped up. And we went straight down into Detroit and landed fast.
Right.
And I expected we would just land out in the middle of the runway, and the chutes would open. We'd slide down the emergency chutes, whatever. But that's not what happened. We actually landed, taxied up to the gate like a normal plane, not knowing if there was any danger still on our plane.
Let me ask you a question now, because when you shoot off those fire extinguishers, it fills up the whole room with like that kind of foam, that kind of.
Yeah.
You had that? How were you breathing?
No, it wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad?
It was just that little area, and I was about 7 rows behind on the other side of the plane, the right side, as compared to the left. So, no, it wasn't that bad at all.
Okay.
So we taxied to the gate, which I thought was weird, first of all. And then it got even more weird because then all these police come on our plane, like 20 police officers, and they all go in the first class area. Fine. But they tell the rest of us just to sit down, and they make us stay for like 20 or 30 minutes sitting in our chairs on the plane. Nobody knows if there's a bomb in the cargo area or an accomplice or anything. So it was kind of weird.
These are
it's
local,
not what I would have expected.
Kurt, these are local uniform cops?
I don't know where they're from. I think they're from the city of Detroit.
Uniforms?
But I don't know that.
Were they wearing uniforms?
Yes, they were wearing uniforms.
Okay, well then
But I couldn't see what they were, okay. But I assume there was some kind of, not like FBI,
okay,
not like that, some kind of local Michigan cops. So after we're sitting in our chairs for about half an hour, they escort the man out of the first class area. And he stands in the doorway for about, 30 seconds. And I got a good look at him. And I turned to my wife and I said, "Holy cow, that's the guy that I saw in Amsterdam before we boarded. He got escorted up. You didn't even have a passport." And I told her the whole story. And then, I realized I had probably seen something important. So she's like, "Well, we should tell the police and help maybe catch the accomplice." Because at this point we knew it was some sort of terrorist attack because he was being taken off in handcuffs and arrested.
Well, 1 second. Now, when you saw him going off the plane, did you see his pants on fire or burn marks on his pants at that point?
No, he was covered in a blanket.
Okay.
It was like from the, around, he had like a blanket around his waist, so you couldn't really see below his waist.
So do you think they took his pants off him or just covered him around and he slid his pants on?
I think his pants were just under the blanket.
Unbelievable.
Probably partially burned.
You'd think the first thing you would do is take his pants off. Yeah,
you would think.
That's the first thing I would do,
but
right?
I couldn't say for sure, though, because it was under a blanket.
Right.
So then we're allowed to get off the plane. Again, we're at the gate. If there was a bomb in our plane, it could have detonated the whole terminal, really. So it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And then to make it worse, we're allowed to take all our carry-on bags off the plane, not knowing if there's a bomb in any of those. They're disturbing the crime scene completely. Everyone's allowed to walk through the burn area and disturb the crime scene. It was really unprofessional.
Let me ask you a question.
You could reach out and touch the seats that were charred.
Now, when you were walking past the burn area, did it look like that, like an accelerant had been poured around there? You know how you can tell sometimes it's kind of like it seeps into the carpet?
No, I didn't get that impression.
Okay.
No. So then we're taken off the plane, and they had evacuated the luggage claim area of an entire terminal for us. And this whole floor was just for passengers of our flight. And we were told to stand along a wall and wait for bomb-sniffing dogs. And we had to wait there a long time, like an hour and a half for the dogs to get there. Well, we're standing there with all our carry-on bags, not knowing if there's a bomb in any of them or anything. So there was a real lack of concern for our safety, which makes sense when you figure out what really happened, which I'll get to in a minute.
Yeah.
So one of the dogs that's brought in sits down by the bag of another Indian-looking man, a different one, and he's hauled off into a side room for questioning. And then after an hour, he's brought out and handcuffed and arrested. And then the police come over to us and make an announcement, and they say, I'm sure you saw what just happened. You're not safe in this area. We need to get you out of this area and move you to another room for your own safety. So then we're taken out of this room and put into a hallway for the next 4 or 5 hours. And all this time, we can't drink, we can't eat, we can't make calls, can't go to the bathroom, nothing. Just kind of like in detention. So after like 5 hours or so, the police make another announcement. We have those responsible for this in custody. Those, plural. Not the man, not him, those. And then they say, everyone's required to do an interview with the FBI, and then you'll be free to go. So then we stood in lines to do our interviews, and that's when I told the FBI what I had seen, hoping to help catch this accomplice in Amsterdam that got this guy on the plane, even though he didn't even have a passport.
Okay, stop there for a second. Now, when you first meet with the FBI, you're alone or you're with your wife?
No, with my wife.
Now, did they treat you as a suspect? How did they treat you?
No, not at all. They were very friendly, very nice, very interested in what I had to say.
Okay.
And they actually called over another FBI officer to take notes, an extra one, of what I was saying.
Okay.
And then they said, we'll be in touch. I said, okay. So then we left. And, then I started talking in the media about what I had seen. And the FBI came to my law office, I think it was 3 days later. And they came into my two FBI officers came into my office, and I was expecting them, to show the security video from Amsterdam, because really the only thing you need me for is to identify the accomplice, right? And say, yeah, that's the guy, this is what happened, that sort of thing. No, I was a lawyer, I know how these things go. These sort of investigations. And I was shocked because not only didn't they bring the video, they didn't even bring any still pictures. Nothing. Which I thought was beyond bizarre because you didn't really need me for anything else except to help with this accomplice. I mean, you have a flight of over 200 people that can help you with identification of the underwear bomber, and you have a chain of custody right off the plane, so you don't need me for that. So it was a weird interview because I got the impression that they were trying to put doubt in my mind, like trying to confuse me and make me think I didn't see what I did. It was very strange. Instead of asking me to help them catch the accomplice. Very strange interview. So they refused to show me any pictures. I asked them why they didn't bring the video. They didn't give me an answer. They just shrugged their shoulders and kind of did, like a laugh under their breath when I asked about the video. And they showed me a series of, I think it was 10 still pictures of different people. I didn't recognize any of them except the last two, and they were both of the underwear bomber himself. And they kept trying to confuse me and make me think that I didn't see what I did.
Well,
I think to me that was the purpose of that interview.
Well, give me an example. How were they trying to confuse you?
Okay. So they give me the series of 10 pictures. The first 8 people, I had no idea who they were or why they're showing them to me. I don't even know. And then the last 2 were of the underwear bomber. I'm like, why are you showing me these? You don't need me to identify him. And then they're like, Kurt, there were a lot of black people on that plane. It's easy for a white guy like you to confuse 2 black people. And I said there were like 6 black people on our plane and no males around the age of this guy. So why, and you don't need me to identify him anyway. Oh, we just know, it's easy to get eyewitness identification wrong and this sort of thing. So it was they were completely not there to get information from me. They were there to give me information to try and confuse me, is the impression I got. If it was a real investigation, what they would have done is brought the airport security video, or at least still photos from it, and or audio, and said, is this the guy? What exactly did you see? Here's the video. Here's the still pictures. What's the details of the conversation and that sort of thing. But that's not what they were doing.
Okay, this might be a good time to take a break, a little commercial break. We have Kurt Haskell with us. He's I guess a retired attorney, you might call himself, former attorney. He was living in Costa Rica with monkeys. We have that straight. He ran for Congress in 2012. Eyewitness to the underwear bomber from the flight from Amsterdam to Detroit in 2009 on Christmas Day. Okay, this is really fascinating stuff. Kurt, I can't thank you enough. We'll be right back after these messages with more of Kurt Haskell, eyewitness to underwear bomber. And now a word from our sponsors. Did you know that 30% of all people on online dating websites and personal ads are either married or in a monogamous relationship? 30%. If you suspect that your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend may be cheating online, go to emailrevealer.com. And our online infidelity investigation. You give us their email address, and we could trace it back to online personal ads, dating sites, and social networks. We can even expand the investigation and find them cheating on escort service sites or even porn sites if they're registered to porn sites and swinger sites. So check out emailrevealer.com if you suspect your spouse is cheating, and check out our online infidelity investigation. William Ramsey is a producer here at the Opperman Report, and he's just come out with a new book, Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. Now, he just sent me a copy of this book. Oh, boy, it's about 2 inches thick, and there's a chapter on just about everybody in this book that you can imagine. The Beatles, and Jack Parsons, everybody's in here. It's incredible. And I definitely recommend this book. There's a bunch of pictures in here, too, of all these people and different chapters and information. Anton LaVey and people I've never heard of, too. There's a whole bunch in here. JFC Fuller. I don't know who he is. But it's great stuff by our producer here, William Ramsey. So check out Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. You can find it on Amazon.com, or you could find it in the Opperman Report.com bookstore. We have an urgent bulletin. It seems that the group Strawman is still on the loose. It has been confirmed that Strawman are Canadian, okay, and that authorities are asking people to stay indoors, lock your doors and windows until this group can be dealt with. You could find more information about this group of Canadians at strawmanmusic.com. You can have your ad played here. Okay, we're looking for sponsors. Okay, in fact, we desperately need sponsors right now to take this show to the next level. So you can have your your ad played here, read live, like I'm doing now, so artfully. Or we can even work up a little jingle for you with some music and stuff like that and play it here. You have no idea how inexpensive it would be to have your ad played on the Opperman Report on 7 stations live Friday night and another 7 stations live on Saturday night, plus replayed every day of the week on different stations, and then archived on YouTube, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and all different kinds of podcasts, Pod This and Podbean, all different kinds of places who archive the show for us. And on those archives, your ad would play indefinitely, forever. You also get a little banner on OppermanReport.com. You get a mention on the air, you get a little interview on the air, and all kinds of fun stuff if you sponsor Opperman Report. We have an opportunity to get this show on a major AM/FM station in California. We've been approved. So if you want to sponsor us into that, so incredibly inexpensive that your ad would be heard by the range covers 5 million people in population where your ad would be broadcast, and all these other stations would be thrown in for free. So really affordable prices to sponsor OppermanReport.com. Get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You can get a copy of that book at emailrevealer.com, or you can get a copy of that book now. It's back up on Amazon.com. How to Become a Successful Private Investigator by Ed Opperman. And this book has been updated a little bit from the previous book that we had that was available to our wonderful listeners. Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here with Kurt Haskell, a former congressional candidate from Michigan, I guess Detroit, Michigan, and living now in Costa Rica. Eyewitness to the underwear bomber on a flight from Amsterdam to Detroit, Michigan, 2009 Christmas Day. We left off. Kurt was sitting in his office with 2 FBI agents, and they were trying to put words in his mouth and trying to confuse him. Not put words in your mouth. I'm putting words in your mouth. But they were trying to confuse you, you were trying to say, or cast doubt in your mind.
Yeah, that's the impression I got. It wasn't a legitimate interview, if you ask me. And I knew it at the time. So red flags were going up with me at that point, and I was thinking, what's going on here? I really had no idea, because in a legitimate interview, they would have had me identify the accomplice, and they did not. So
did they ask at all about the accomplice?
They asked what I saw. Yes, they did. They asked me to tell my story, which, is similar to what I just did on this show a few minutes ago. But no pictures. So that was weird, very weird to me. And then things kept getting more weird. Just after this interview, there was a press release that after reviewing 400 hours of security footage at the Amsterdam airport, it was determined that there were no accomplices. And I knew that was a lie. So I knew at that point there was some sort of cover-up going on. I had the red flags from the FBI interview, but this one was kind of the nail in the coffin, that to me that there was some kind of cover-up going on. And then it got even more suspect. There were hearings in Congress a couple weeks later, and during the hearings, the State Department admitted that they knew the underwear bomber was a terrorist before the flight, and that they had allowed him on our flight on purpose. And but the reason they gave was not the real reason. The reason they gave was that they said they allowed him on our flight on purpose to track him to other terrorists in the United States after he landed. That was not what really happened. That was a lie to cover up what was really going on. But I wouldn't know that till much later. But nonetheless, we had an admission now that they had allowed him on our plane on purpose, and we had a cover-up of the man escorting him on the plane that I saw. So put two and two together, this is likely some sort of man tied to the United States government, along with the girl at the counter recognizing him, that he's probably has some sort of ties to the U.S. government escorting this underwear bomber on the plane. The next strange thing that happened in late January, about a month after the incident, ABC News came out with a story that said sources within the underwear bomber investigation have revealed that there was, in fact, an accomplice, but that the accomplice was solely there to make sure the underwear bomber did not get cold feet. So that was, again, more confirmation that what I had seen was, in fact, correct, and that they were lying about what was on the security cam footage, and also ties into what happened in the congressional hearings. So, again, this is reinforcing in my mind that this was some sort of U.S. government-related official that escorted him onto the plane.
Now, let me ask you a couple of questions. Now, with the congressional hearing, were you subpoenaed to go before the congressional hearing?
No, not at all. Nobody from our flight was there. It was mostly members from the State Department and the National Counterterrorism Center who testified. Are
there any other witnesses who saw the man, the Indian-looking man in the suit with the underwear bomber besides you?
Yes, there was one other one that contacted me, but she did not want to come public because she was scared.
Your wife didn't see this guy?
I've never divulged her name.
Your wife
because she asked me not to.
Your wife never saw?
No, because remember we were playing cards, we were facing each other, and this happened behind her.
Gotcha.
And you have to remember what I saw, which was nothing at the time. It was a non-event until what happened on the plane 8 hours later suddenly made it become an important event. But at the time, it was nothing. I didn't even tell her what I saw at the time because it was so meaningless.
Now, you as an attorney, did you ever file a lawsuit against the airline and say, hey, I need to be compensated because of this or that?
No, I did research it, but the law does not allow for that unless you have a physical injury on an international flight. And I did not have a physical injury. Fright is not a physical injury.
But didn't you think
I wasn't close enough to be affected by the fire. I was 7 rows away.
But now what about...
I did strongly consider filing a lawsuit against the federal government for a violation of my constitutional rights.
But did you ever consider that if you would have filed a lawsuit against the airline that you could have gotten a copy of those surveillance tapes?
No, I would not. Not against the airline. The lawsuit would have been bounced at the first hearing for having no authority under the law, which it doesn't have because I had no physical injury. So we would never even have gotten that far. Now, I did strongly consider filing one against the federal government because what they did was intentional. They caused intentional psychological harm to the people on the flight that saw what happened. It's a very scary thing to see your flight on fire at 20,000 feet.
Right.
And then we had admissions in Congress that it was done on purpose, although they deny that they provided him with the device. But that's, that what happened there occurred later in my investigation, when I finally found out what happened with the device. So you want me to go on?
Yeah, let me ask you a question first, though. With the device, now, you're saying that it came out in Congress that they allowed him to get on the plane because they wanted to follow him to Detroit to see who he was talking to. But did they have knowledge that this device was not going to work?
Yes, but they didn't admit it. I didn't figure this out till later, and I'll tell you how I figured this out.
Okay.
They didn't admit that, though, for obvious reasons. What they said was, we'll talk about the other details in closed session. So they shut down the further discussion of the details. So there's more there. So anyway, now I really want to know, as most people would, why did this happen to us? There seemed to be a cover-up going on. So I started to go to all the court hearings because they were in Detroit, in a courthouse I practiced in on a regular basis. So I would go and just watch. And a lot of times I would be the only passenger there, or my wife and I would be the only ones there. And things that would happen in the court hearings wouldn't even get reported in the news. all these people from the mainstream media were there, and, they would report on, the underwear bomber said something in Arabic at the hearing, Allahu Akbar or something, but they wouldn't report on any of the details of what happened during the hearing. It was very weird. And I was at one hearing.
Give me an example. What do you think was important that should have been reported?
I'll tell you right now. Okay. Here was a hearing I was at where there was a request by the prosecutors. Now, I have to take a step back. The underwear bomber fired his court-appointed attorney, and the judge said, well, I'm not going to only represent yourself. I'm going to appoint a standby attorney to help you with questions and with paperwork. He'll be like your helper. So the prosecutors filed a hearing for a request to not allow the standby attorney to see any of the evidence, which I thought was weird, because how can this guy help if he can't even see the evidence? How can he advise or help with paperwork if he can't see the evidence?
Yeah, have you ever heard of that before?
So I'm watching this.
Wait, have you ever heard of that before? Of a prosecutor saying that?
No.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
I thought it was crazy. Yeah. So I'm watching this, and this was one hearing when none of this was ever reported in the media. And the reason the prosecutors asked for this, here's what they said in court. If we allow the standby attorney to have the evidence, he's not the real attorney, he's only standby, he's not subject to attorney-client privilege, so therefore passengers from the flight can send subpoenas to him for the information, it's not protected by attorney-client privilege, and the passengers from the flight can use that information to sue the federal government. That's what they said. And here I am thinking, well, how can we sue the federal government? What did they do here that they would think they'd be responsible for under a lawsuit? And to me, this was a bombshell information dropped in this court hearing, and nobody reported on it at all, not one person in the media. And it was kind of an aha moment to me. And it kind of got me angry because I knew this was all a lie and a big cover-up. So I went back to my office.
Oh, before you get there, let me ask you a question. Now, when you're attending these trials every day, these hearings, and
they weren't every day, by the way. They were about once a month. The trial didn't happen for like 22 months, and they were about once a month until the trial.
So now, when you're watching these hearings and you walk out in the hallway, your friends see you because you know all these lawyers there and the other people there, and they knew you were on the plane. Were you telling them, hey, man, something really weird is going on here? What were they saying?
Yes, I was telling everybody.
Okay, what was everybody saying?
They don't know what to believe because what I was saying was like so shocking to them, yet they know that I'm a stand-up guy and wouldn't make it up. And why would I risk like being hit with a charge of interfering with a federal investigation or put my law license at risk, things like that, by making up lies and telling lies to the police, right? They knew I wouldn't do that.
Now, were you going on the news at that point and doing interviews and telling everybody this is all fraud, or you were still in the process of awakening?
Early on, I was going on. I was being invited on like CNN and things, but there was I think it was about a 2-week period when there was no official statement from the White House. This is when I was going on the mainstream media a lot. Once the White House came out with an official statement that, he was a sole perpetrator, yada, 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 nobody would talk to me anymore. None. They all cut me off completely.
Now, one more thing, too. Now, did you know this judge?
A little. Ironically, she was the one that gave my wife the oath to swearing her into the bar.
Unbelievable. Now,
three years before, but I didn't know her on a personal basis. I don't think I even ever had one case in front of her. But I knew her from that. When my wife got sworn in, we both went into her office, into her chambers with her and chatted for a while. Three years before, she was sworn in 2006. So I knew her from that, but that's all.
Now, what about now you're sitting there watching these hearings. Couldn't either the prosecution or the defense, if they really wanted to screw you, name you as a witness, so then you couldn't sit there and watch?
The defense did name me as a witness, but not until a couple days before the trial. Now, could they have named me before? The prosecutors never would have named me as a witness, I don't think, because I wouldn't have supported their case. And the defendant was solely in charge of his own witnesses. So I don't know that he was actually thinking about any of that.
Gotcha.
You know, he wasn't really a lawyer. So anyway, weird things kept happening like that at the hearings. And I sent a fax to the standby attorney and I said, hey, you know, I think you're getting shorted here by the court system. You can't even see the evidence. You know, I was a passenger on the flight, yada, yada, yada. If you want to talk to me about the case and what I saw, here's my number. Within 15 minutes, I got a call. We need to meet from the standby attorney. So we set up a day to go meet, and we chatted for about 2 hours in his office. And he told me, you know, something weird's going on with this case. He told me this. He said, you know, my client won't even talk to me about any of the details, and the information you've given me here today is more than my own client's given me. He said it's very strange, you know, and I can't see the evidence. They're hiding evidence and have sealed the videotape from the Amsterdam airport, not allowed out in the public. He didn't even have it, the standby attorney. So we both agreed something very weird was going on in the case. And so we stayed in touch throughout the proceedings. And the trial was set for October 2011, I think. Yeah, almost 2 years later. And there was a hearing a few days before the trial. And in that hearing, the judge asked the underwear bomber, who do you plan on calling for witnesses? And he said, I only have one witness. Attorney Kurt Haskell will be my only witness. So I was shocked because I hadn't heard anything definite that I would be a witness. And remember, he was representing himself, so he was in charge of his own case. So I was shocked, and I'd never talked to him. I actually tried to go talk to him in prison one time, but that's a little off topic what happened there. But
well, let me ask you a question, because we said we're going to do 1 hour. Can you give me more time? We can maybe do 2 hours?
I mean, we can do more. I don't know if there's a full 2 hours you want to talk about.
Let's just go till you run out of breath. How's that?
Sure,
Okay.
That's fine. However long you want to go.
Well, then tell us real quick. What happened when you tried to visit him in prison, in jail?
Okay, so here's what happened. It's kind of interesting. This was a little bit back before the trial, a few months earlier. I had been calling the prison. This was the time when he had fired his attorney. So he had no attorney, not even a standby attorney. So I'm like, well, I talked to one of my associate attorneys in my office, and I said, well, why don't we go try and talk to him? He's probably getting the shaft from the government. We knew there was some sort of cover-up going on. He didn't have an attorney. Why don't we go offer our services to him, or at least talk to him and see if we could help or whatever, get involved, anything. So we kept calling the prison day after day. You know, can we schedule an appointment to meet with him? You know, kept getting, leaving messages, getting voicemail, whatever. Like three weeks went by. No one would ever call us back. Nothing. No one would ever give us an appointment. So I'm like, you know what? We're going to go out to the prison and try and talk to him. So myself and an associate attorney of mine drove to the prison.
Wait, Kurt. Now, you've had other witnesses or clients that were being held in pretrial detention, right? Now, was this in a prison or the pretrial jail?
No, this was a federal prison.
Oh, they put him in a prison. Okay. Now, have you dealt with that prison before and visited clients in that prison before?
No, I had not.
Okay.
I never did. The criminal cases I did were never real high end like that.
Okay.
I did smaller type criminal. But anyway, so we drove there, went into the prison. We said what we're there for. We'd like to meet with Umar Farooq Abdul Muttalab. We gave him both of our bar cards. And the guard said, okay, you need to talk to the head of the prison wing he's in. She's in a meeting. She'll be out in about 15 minutes. And then you'll be able to meet with him. And I said, oh, great. So we took seats and we waited and we saw the lady come out of her meeting. You know, she was behind a glass wall and she looked at our bar cards. And by this point, I had been pretty out there in the media criticizing the government over this incident. And she looked and she shook her head no after she looked at my bar card. And then the guard came out and said, you'll have to go call and make an appointment for an interview. You can't just stop in. And then I'm like, what do you want me to do? Go out to my car with my cell phone and call you from there? And he said, you'll just have to call and set it up. So anyway, we went back to my office, called from there, and then we were told, oh, you can never have an appointment with him. He has to decide he wants to meet with you first. So you'll never be able to meet with him unless he decides that. And we won't give him any message that you want to meet with him.
Well,
So that was my adventure trying to talk to him in prison.
Did you try and send him a letter saying, hey, put me on your witness, your visitor list?
No. What I did next is start talking to the standby attorney, and I talked to him about this, and he said, you know what, it's probably better you didn't talk to him anyway. If he wants to call you as a witness, it would be better if the two of you never talked in person. And I agreed, and I said, okay, I'll just keep to myself and stay away. So that's what we decided. So as the trial was approaching, there was a hearing I couldn't go to. It was I think this was a Thursday, and I think the trial started the next Tuesday, so like 5 days later. I was in a trial of my own on one of my cases in another court building. It was about 3 or 4 blocks from where these hearings were going on. And during my trial, my phone kept buzzing. I had my cell phone on vibrate. It kept going off, like constantly. I'm like, what the heck is going on? So when my trial got done, I took a look, and the first thing I saw was a text from my brother who lives in Orlando, Florida. And he said, I hear you're going to be a witness in the underwear bombing trial. And that's what the text said. I'm like, what? And I'm thinking, how did he know that? So I called him immediately. And he's like, I just heard it on the radio here in Florida that you're going to be a witness. I'm like, I don't even know this. News to me. So I ran over to the courthouse where the underwear bomber hearings were going on, like 3 blocks away. And they were just finishing, coming out. And I saw the standby attorney, Anthony Chambers, coming out. And I said, I need to talk to you for a second. And I said, look, I hear I'm going to be a witness in the underwear bombing trial. And he said, yes, you're the only witness. And I said, I have some concerns here, and these are my concerns. One, he is representing himself, and my concern would be he's going to put me on the stand just to ask me questions to make me look stupid, because I don't know if he's in on this or not. And I was expecting Anthony Chambers, the standby attorney, to calm my fears and say, look, he's not in on it. He's not going to do that. No, what he said was, if I find out he's going to do anything like that, I'll let you know. Which I thought was a completely bizarre answer. Here we are almost 2 years into the case, and he doesn't even know if the guy he's helping represent himself is, in fact, a government agent of some kind in on the whole plot. It was completely bizarre. So we go to the trial on the Tuesday, and very first thing was a motion to kick me out of the courtroom because I'm a witness now, so I had to leave. My wife got to stay because they didn't list her as a witness, but the judge told her that we could not talk about the case at all, which I thought was kind of funny, but whatever. So she got to stay. I had to go. And about 3 hours into the trial, they took a break. The first day was short. It was like 3 hours. The very next day they came back, he was pleading guilty to all charges which require mandatory life in prison with no chance of parole. And I missed one point. When I was having the meetings with the standby attorney one day, he told me, it's completely bizarre, but the government just wants this case to go away. They're offering real lenient plea deals just because they want the case to go away and get it out of the press. That's what he told me. So now we go fast forward to the trial. We have him pleading guilty to all the charges which require mandatory life with no chance of parole. Nobody ever does that. I mean, if that's the best you can do, you take it to trial and take your chances. So I knew it was a garbage. I knew it was garbage. Something weird was going on because nobody ever. Why would you take a plea like that? You wouldn't, especially with lenient deals on the table, right?
What were the lenient deals? Do you know?
He didn't tell me.
Okay.
All he told me was they were very lenient, and the government just wants the case to go away. That was the exact words he used. He didn't give me any specifics. So when he took this plea, I'm like, something's not right here. And of course, the judge barely questioned him about it, even though if I was the judge, this would have raised huge red flags with me why someone would take this sort of deal, right? She barely raised any questions to him at all about it. So the sentencing was set for February sometime, a few months later. And under Michigan law, all crime victims get to make a victim impact statement at the sentencing. So even though I want to be testifying at the trial now because it was over, I would still get to make a victim impact statement. But what the judge did here, and I think it was specifically to keep me quiet, was she limited all the victims to 5 minutes each in their victim impact statement, which is also unheard of. I mean, the reason they have these trials is to bring some sort of justice to the victims. And, you might be thinking, well, maybe there was 200 people lined up to give these victim impact statements. No, there wasn't. We had to send in a request to make victim impact statement, and only 5 people sent them in. So there was only 5 victim impact statements.
Okay, Kurt, this might be a good time to take another commercial break.
Okay.
So we'll be right back. We got Kurt Richard Haskell. He's a Detroit attorney, Detroit, Michigan. Eyewitness. He was on the plane to the underwear bomber, became a witness at the trial. A lot of shenanigans going on here, to say the least. Okay. And now he's living in Costa Rica after running for Congress in Michigan and running up against a political shaft. Okay, we'll be right back with Kurt Richard Haskell right after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. Did you know that 30% of all people on online dating websites and personal ads are either married or in a monogamous relationship? 30%. If you suspect that your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend may be cheating online, go to emailrevealer.com and our online infidelity investigation. You give us their email address, and we can trace it back to online personal ads, dating sites, and social networks. We can even expand the investigation and find them cheating on escort service sites or even porn sites if they're registered to porn sites and swinger sites. So check out emailrevealer.com if you suspect your spouse is cheating, and check out our online infidelity investigation. William Ramsey is a producer here at the Opperman Report, and he's just come out with a new book, Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. Now, he just sent me a copy of this book. Oh, boy, it's about 2 inches thick, and there's a chapter on just about everybody in this book that you can imagine. The Beatles and Jack Parsons, everybody's in here. It's incredible. And I definitely recommend this book. There's a bunch of pictures in here, too, of all these people and different chapters and information. Anton LaVey and people I've never heard of, too. There's a whole bunch in here. JFC Fuller. I don't know who he is. But it's great stuff by our producer here, William Ramsey. So check out Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. You can find it on Amazon.com, or you could find it in the Opperman Report .com bookstore. We have an urgent bulletin. It seems that the group Strawman is still on the loose. It has been confirmed that Strawman are Canadian, okay, and that authorities are asking people to stay indoors, lock your doors and windows until this group can be dealt with. You could find more information about this group of Canadians, at strawmanmusic.com. You can have your ad played here. Okay, we're looking for sponsors. Okay, in fact, we desperately need sponsors right now to take this show to the next level. So you can have your ad played here, read live, like I'm doing now, so artfully. Or we can even work up a little jingle for you with some music and stuff like that and play it here. You have no idea how inexpensive it would be to have your ad played on the Opperman Report on 7 stations live Friday night and another 7 stations live on Saturday night, plus replayed every day of the week on different stations, and then archived on YouTube, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and all different kinds of podcasts, Pod This and Podbean, all different kinds of places who archive the show for us. And on those archives, your ad would play indefinitely, forever. You also get a little banner on OppermanReport.com. You get a mention on the air, you get a little interview on the air, and all kinds of fun stuff if you sponsor Opperman Report. We have an opportunity to get this show on a major AM/FM station in California. We've been approved. So if you want to sponsor us into that, so incredibly inexpensive that your ad would be heard by the range covers 5 million people in population where your ad would be broadcast, and all these other stations would be thrown in for free. So really affordable prices to sponsor OppermanReport.com. Get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You can get a copy of that book at emailrevealer.com, or you can get a copy of that book now. It's back up on Amazon.com. How to Become a Successful Private Investigator by Ed Opperman. And this book has been updated a little bit from the previous book that we had that was available to our wonderful listeners. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here with Kurt Richard Haskell, former Detroit, Michigan attorney, now living in exile, expatriate down there in Costa Rica. He's an eyewitness to the underwear bomber. The event took place 2009, Christmas Day. Ran for Congress in 2012, and the whole system, Democrats came against him there, kind of a shaft. Richard, have you ever had a chance to talk to the bomber?
I've never talked to him, no.
Have you ever
seen... Oh, well, no, I take that back. In court,
as
I was making my victim impact statement, he stood about 3 feet to my left, and I told him, "You're nothing but a patsy." And he said, "I'm not a patty, P-A-D-D-Y." He didn't even know what the term meant. But that's it. No, I've never talked to him.
Have you ever sent him a letter?
No, never sent him a letter. No.
Okay.
Now, I did find out later that faxes that I was sending to a standby attorney was taking to him and reading to him. So he did know who I was, and that's what led to him calling me as a witness.
Before we get to the victim impact statement, did you ever find out or figure out why he had you on the witness list, what he was intending to ask you, and what his theory of his defense was?
He had me on his list because his standby attorney was taking the faxes that I sent to the standby attorney and reading them to him. So he understood that I knew there was something corrupt going on, and he was going to call me to plead entrapment, to have me tell my story on the stand like I did here today. And he was going to use that. I don't know if he was going to use that as leverage to get a real lenient deal or just try and get an acquittal. I don't really know. But that was the goal, to plead entrapment.
And did you ever find out why he took this lousy plea deal? Because it's no one was injured. There's no debts. There's no injuries. It's a hijacking, which is serious crap. But the thing is that still a life sentence. It's a pretty
Yes, I found out what happened about 2 months after the sentencing hearing. I ran into a standby attorney at a court proceeding where we both just had cases at the same day at the same courthouse by coincidence. And it's like, "Can you talk to me a minute out in the hallway? I want to talk to you about something." And we went out in the hallway, and I said, "Look, you and I both know that plea was not legitimate. There is no criminal defendant on earth that will take this sort of plea to life in prison with no chance of parole, especially with lenient plea deals on the table. And I said, I only see three possible reasons why that happened. And I said he was either promised something, he was threatened, or he was tortured in prison. And his standby attorney said it's either number 2 or number 3, meaning he was either threatened or he was tortured in prison. He said he was definitely not promised anything. So I said, okay. So that's what he told me. So he's either threatened or tortured. I don't know which. But, at a lot of the hearings, he would complain about conditions in the prison. He would complain he's not being allowed his phone calls with a standby attorney, not getting faxes or letters from him, having problems setting up appointments with him, and basically all these complaints he had about prison officials. I mean, almost every single hearing I was at, he was complaining about something. So I'm not surprised by that at all.
All right, tell us about the victim impact statement.
Yeah, so, I think that what happened in the trial was to make sure I didn't testify. That, because of, you have this local attorney going on the stand for someone that tried to kill him. This would have been very sensationalized news that couldn't have been ignored. So I definitely think they didn't want me on the stand. And his standby attorney told me that. They did not. So I think that's the reason that he was either threatened or tortured to make that plea. But anyway, I got to give a victim impact statement. Yes, it was lowered to 5 minutes, but which was outrageous. But that's what Judge Nancy Edmonds did. And I prepared it. I was very careful with the words because the statement is supposed to be what this incident has done to you. So I worded it very carefully. I would say things like, I found out the government is corrupt, and because of that, that yada, yada, yada. I'm not sleeping at night or whatever. I can't remember the words of it exactly, but I got in all my shots of the court, the media, the government. I took all my shots at them for 5 minutes, but I worded it in a way that explaining how it affected my life, because that's what's required in a victim impact statement. So nobody could interrupt me in saying I wasn't following the rules. And you can still read it on the internet. There's a word-for-word version of it on the internet available if you Google Kurt Haskell victim impact statement. But when I gave that statement, the judge got absolutely livid. She was so angry with me. She got completely red-faced. She kept looking at her watch as if it was time to cut me off. And remember, that I was a victim here. These proceedings are supposed to be for the victims. And this judge was acting anything like me being a victim. And she got real testy with me and testy with my wife, who gave her victim impact statement next after mine. And the judge yelled at her saying, I don't want any kind of statements like your husband just gave, something like that. And my wife wasn't even going to give a statement like that at all. But this is how this judge treated victims, of a supposed terrorist attack. Very unprofessional. Anyway, so I did get my 5 minutes of say-so, which the press completely ignored. If you looked at the mainstream media reports of the victim impact statements, they'll talk about 5 victims giving speeches, but then they'll only talk about the content of 4 of them and leave me out completely. They don't talk about the content of my speech at all. Very, very corrupt. Very corrupt.
I wonder if the plan was to set the plane on fire and have the plane go down.
No. Oh, by the way, no. Later in my investigation, as the trial was getting closer, the standby attorney came out and made a statement to the press, and there was an article written by the Detroit Free Press, the biggest paper in Detroit, about it. And what he said was that he's obtained the expert reports from the two explosive experts the prosecution has hired to testify at the trial, and both experts agree that the bomb was impossibly defective and could not have detonated. So what that tells me, and ties in with what I said, a little while ago on the show, we have the admissions that this man was put on the plane on purpose. They knew he was a terrorist. What I saw him being escorted, by this man without a passport. We have the admission by an insider to ABC News that there, in fact, was an accomplice. Make sure he didn't get cold feet. And then we have the arrest of the second Indian man after we had landed, and then the strange behavior of the FBI and the sealing of the airport security video. All this tells me was that, no, he was provided with a bomb that was intentionally defective by the United States government. Who gave it to him and where, I'm not really sure. He might even have thought that maybe they were Al-Qaeda members, but really they were undercover. I don't know. Or maybe he was in on it too, the bomber. But what is for certain is that, in my mind, is that some agent of the U.S. government provided him with this defective bomb. And the U.S. government has a history, especially around that time, of providing out defective bombs to would-be terrorists. This wouldn't be a new thing that they did. It was actually very frequent. Lately they've gone more about causing completely fraudulent events, fake type events. But at that time, they were using more like very low IQ patsies and talking them into events and providing them with defective devices. And that's what they did here. It was completely in line with how the FBI acted at the time, FBI, CIA. So that's what happened. But it took me about a year and a half until, into my investigation, until Anthony Chambers made this announcement. And, for that year and a half, I thought that the U.S. government tried to kill me. But if you think about it logically, their goal from this event was to get these body scanning machines in the airports, one of the major goals. So think about it logically. If a plane blows up, you're not going to know where the bomb was.
Right.
But if it is defective, you can say it was in his underwear because you found it or found pieces of it. And now we need these body scanning machines. So, no, it was a completely, I won't say fake event, because they knew there would be a little fire. They made this device where it would cause a small fire that would be put out, and then they could claim terrorist attack. And maybe this guy legitimately wanted to blow up our plane. I don't know. Even to this day, I don't know. But in any event, if the goal was to arrest this man and stop a terrorist attack, then he should have been arrested before boarding if they knew who he was. But by their own admission, they put him on our plane on purpose. And look, he just so happens to have an impossibly defective device. Sure.
Now, the man who tackled him, has he ever been identified? Do you think he was in on it?
Yeah, he has been identified, and I definitely think he was in on it. His name was, God.
Well, why do you think he was in on it?
Because I'll tell you why I think he was in on it. He was immediately held in detention for like a week and wasn't allowed to talk to the press. The FBI says they were holding him for, I forget, for his own safety or something, some stupid reason. But I think what they were doing is coaching him. And if you look, he was the only passenger that required to be paid for interviews with the press. And lo and behold, just before this event happened, he made a movie. He was a Dutch filmmaker. He made a movie about an incident that was very similar to one that we went through. So,
really?
Yeah, that tells me he was in on it. And then, his interviews are really weird and sketchy, too. But his name is escaping me. But he was a Dutch filmmaker.
Now, who put out the fire? The flight attendant?
Yes. And I actually met and talked to the flight attendant that put it out.
And what do you think about her?
I'm sorry?
You think she was in on it, or?
No, okay. No. It was a guy. It was a African-American male. And his name is escaping me, too. He's the one that put it out. No, he was in such shock over it that he retired from being a flight attendant immediately after. And as of the trial, when I last talked to him, he was still going through therapy over it. He was really messed up over it. So, no, I don't think he was in on it at all.
Now, the congressional hearing, who were the congressmen in charge of the hearing?
I'm trying to remember. I can't remember exactly the congressman, but the key speaker was Patrick Kennedy from the State Department. And some of the video is actually on YouTube. I don't know if the key video is on YouTube anymore because they've scrapped a lot of it. And actually, they had him come back a second time a week later because his first interview was so damning to the government. with his admissions that the bomber was put on the plane on purpose. They had him come back a week later to kind of explain and maybe soften it a little bit. And I don't know if the first interviews are still on YouTube or not. Maybe only the second ones are. But Patrick Kennedy was the main speaker. I can't remember who the congressmen were that were questioning him.
Okay. Now, do you think we've covered the whole story? Is there anything I've left out?
Yeah. You asked me a little bit ago about filing a lawsuit. Now, right. I almost sued the federal government over this. So I was researching it. I met with a few attorneys to see if they would take the case around Detroit. And nobody would touch it. They were all scared of the U.S. government. I met with like 5 attorneys. Nobody would take it. So, of course, though, I was an attorney and I could handle the case myself. So I started researching it, and I figured it would be a hugely complex case because you can't just sue the federal government. You have to sue individuals within the federal government. So I would have to name people that were involved, and I had no idea who was behind it, what specific people were. And then, you bring in, it was an international flight, so you have international aviation law. And I just kept thinking about it. Should I file this? Should I not? They're probably just going to bounce the case. Maybe they'll even try and fine me or take my law license. And I went back and forth. I'm going to file it. I'm not going to file it. I'm going to file it. I'm not going to file it. And it went down for about a week. There was about a week left in the statute of limitations. And I wrote up the complaint to file it. And I printed it off, and I never filed it. At the last minute, I decided to not file it because I thought it would have been too time-consuming for me to handle that case by myself. And I had a very busy law office at the time. And I didn't think I had enough time to put the proper amount of time into it. And I immediately regretted it. To me, that's one of the biggest mistakes in my life, not filing it, because I think I had a great case. And in my mind, to remedy the situation or try and make up for it, then I decided to run for Congress in 2012. The trial ended in, the sentencing was in February 2012. So the next month, I declared that I was running for U.S. Congress. In my mind, it was kind of to make up for not filing the lawsuit, which I still regret not filing. So that's kind of how that all played out. And then, of course, I talked about the corruption that happened in the lawsuit. And I mean, when I ran for office, the corruption when I ran for office. And by that point, November 2012, I had been betrayed by the media, the court system, the government, and then the political system. And that was enough. And then Lori and I decided that's enough. We're leaving the United States. We're done. We've been betrayed by everybody. And there's no reason left here. Even an honest person can't win running for high office. There's no point in staying in the United States anymore. So that was kind of our made up our mind to leave.
But it wasn't out of fear.
It wasn't out of fear. It was out of the system is too broken to fix. No. More like that. And we're just kind of disgusted with how I left out one thing too. You asked me about the media. The mainstream media talked to me for about 2 weeks and then ignored me up until I was named as a witness in the trial, which was 5 days before the trial. But from that day until the trial ended, 6 days later, the media lambasted me, the mainstream media, calling me a nutcase, a conspiracy theorist, wacko, all these things all over the press throughout the United States, trying to destroy my reputation after they had completely ignored me for almost 23 months. And that was very upsetting too. Very, to someone that made their living off their reputation like I did, for the mainstream media to come out and try and destroy me like that, it was completely uncalled for. But they did it. And I actually almost got into a fist fight with one of the reporters in the courthouse. I was so angry with a piece he had written about me. I can't remember that guy's name exactly. But they were so concerned with me, the media, that during the trial, when they're sitting in the courthouse, watching. They had their laptops out, and they were going on my blog and reading what I was writing about the case. Mainstream media reporters, it was bizarre. They're all going on my blog, wondering what Kurt Haskell is going to talk about in this case. Anyway, so that you can see there why I would be angry with the government, the press, the court system, a courthouse that I worked in all the time. I didn't know this judge very well, but I was in this courthouse every week. That the court system betrayed me. I actually begged Judge Edmonds after the trial was done to release the video that she had sealed to clear my good name. She refused, cut me off in the victim impact statement, and got angry with me. And then I'm betrayed by the Democratic Party because of me standing up for what's right in the Underwood bomber case. So you can see why I left the U.S. I'm just disgusted with it.
Yeah. Now I can't blame you. Now this man you described as an Indian-looking man that was handcuffed. Mm-hmm. Was he ever identified? Whatever happened became him.
Oh yeah. I completely forgot about that. So so that man was arrested. He was a different Indian man. But what happened with him is interesting because, this was back when the mainstream media was still talking to me. I came out to the press and I said, told the story of how this guy, the dog sniffed an explosive in his bag, and they interviewed him and arrested him. I told the story. The government immediately came out with a statement and said that's not true. And then, but remember, all the passengers from the flight were standing next to me along this wall when it happened. So several other passengers then spoke out in the press and said, Kurt's right. We saw this too. So then the government changed their story. And then they said, oh, there was a guy arrested, but he was a passenger from another flight. And then, I came back and I did another interview and I said, look, that's impossible. The only people on this floor were people from our flight, because they had evacuated this whole floor before. And not only that, they weren't even letting people on other flights exit the flights. They were all making them stay on the planes till they had our situation cleared up. So that's impossible. So then the government made another press release and said, oh, no, he was from that flight, but this was an agricultural violation. He was found with some fruits and vegetables that weren't allowed, something like that. And I said, no, that's impossible too. These were bomb-sniffing dogs, not agricultural dogs. And that's why this dog sat down by this bag, because he sniffed a bomb. And then they changed the story again, and they said, no, he was detained for a passport violation. And again, I said, that's not possible either. He sniffed an explosive. And then after I said that, they just quit responding to me, the government. They made so many excuses for this guy. And that's it. Then they just quit talking about him.
Did you ever get his name?
No.
Well, they cracked the fruits and vegetables smuggling operation.
Right. So they had 5 different stories on this guy. None of them made sense. Yeah. So it's just a complete cover-up.
Right, just imagine, you got FBI, the local cops there, the whole area sealed off. They're holding you for 7, 8, 9 hours, and some guy just happened to get off a different plane and just wander into the sea.
Yeah, it's laughable, isn't it?
Crazy.
A bomb-sniffing dog sniffs some fruit and vegetables. Sure, right. That's why he was arrested.
Now, you've come from this. I know, it's just a crazy, but I can imagine who they put in charge of writing these press, coming up with these ideas. Now,
and then after that, a spokesperson for the government sent out an apology to members of the press about all their different stories about this guy. They didn't send one to me, but every time they come out with a press story, they were responding to something I would say in the press. It was laughable. They never sent the apology email to me, but someone I had become close to in the press sent me a copy, and I got to read it. It's kind of laughable, really.
Of course not. If they were to email you again, you'd shoot holes through that one, too. They couldn't take any chance. Okay, let's leave Haskell out of this email loop from now on. Now, you said that I almost want to joke and say maybe these monkeys are spying on you. That's where this will come up to the house. But now, what about, you said now that having lived through this and experienced this, mm-hmm. and your story has a real ring of truth to it throughout the whole thing. Now, you say now that when you see other incidences of these kind of things, give us another incidence where you can point to and say, hey, this looks just like the thing that I went through.
There's a lot of them that are fake. None of them are all exactly the same, but there are a lot of them. And I hate to name off so many, but what do I want to say? These days, they're becoming more and more fake. See, in 2012, the United States legalized propaganda. See, in my incident in 2009, the underwear bomber incident, it was still illegal. So they were using a different tactic then. They were getting these people with low IQs, and they were talking them into plots and supplying them with weapons and money, what have you, and then saying, oh, look, we busted a terrorist here, when it was all set up by the FBI, CIA. Since 2012, it's a different tactic. They're completely faking events. Completely. It's theater, like plays, and it's legal now. And I'll give you some incidents, and some of your listeners might get angry with me, but it's become, what do I want to say? Once you live through one of these events and you realize the tactics the government uses to lie and deceive and to have the media lie about events, it's easy to spot another one. And that's kind of the position I'm in. I've seen the inside. I've seen how they do things. And I'll tell you why, because during the underwear bomber incident, and I've probably only touched on maybe half or less of what I actually went through during that event in the show today, I knew certain things to be true. And I would see how the government would lie. For instance, the airport security video. They came out and said, we watched 400 hours and there's no accomplice. That was a lie. They also permanently sealed the video so nobody could see it. And they hid the video even from the standby attorney. So you can see that's just one example how they do things. I said he never had a passport when he was boarding, and then they created a passport for him, and a year and a half after the incident, as the trial was coming up, they showed this fake passport of his where, you know, his own signature on the passport is only his first name, Umar. I'm like, this isn't even a legitimate passport. But they put that out there. I mean, what other incident are you seeing pictures of someone's passport? None. They put that out there to discredit me and released it all over the mainstream media. It's a picture of his passport. Anyway, I'm digressing. I know how to spot the government tactics of deceit. So I'll give you some incidents, and they might not all be completely fake. Each one has some elements of truth and some elements of fakeness. And like I said, the tactic since 2012 is different. It's more like they're putting on movies and then they're saying they're real. So these are just off the top of my head. Sandy Hook, fake. Boston bombing, fake. Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting, fake. Roanoke, Virginia reporter shooting, fake. Charleston church shooting, fake. The Chattanooga Military Recruitment Center, Naval Yard shooting, fake. San Bernardino shooting, fake. And there's a lot more. Those are just off the top of my head. And like I was saying, though, they might not all be fake. Maybe just certain elements, but they are created with certain goals in mind. Like the underwear bomber incident, one of the main goals was to get body scanning machines in all the airports. Another goal was to get the Patriot Act renewed, because certain portions of it were going to expire in early January, in February, and this incident happened on Christmas, and they wanted to get that renewed. So, and there was also legislation pending to not allow the body scanning machines in the airports. Anyway, each one has certain goals, and the goals might be different in each case, but they're very easy to pick out. Once you've been involved in one, you learn the tricks. One thing I can say that maybe your listeners can't is, I know for 100% certainty that the government creates fake events. I know it. I lived one. I was there. Nobody can tell me that what I went through did not happen, was not true. So I start out with that basic premise as a fact. The government creates fake events and lies, along with the media and the court system. So your listeners may not. They may have some doubt. They may say, Kurt's a lunatic. We don't believe him. He's lying for whatever reason. he made this up to run for Congress, whatever reasons they want to make up, I don't know. But they might have some doubt that my story is true. I don't have that doubt. So when I see these events and see the same elements, I can easily spot them. And I like to talk about them on my Facebook page, because hardly anybody has the experience that I did, really, being an eyewitness to a so-called false flag event. Where I can go on and pick out certain elements and say, this is evidence that this is another fake event.
Well, let me back up a little bit. Now, in your instance, dealing with the media reporting, how much of it do you think was media being complicit, and how much was just sloppy, inaccurate, lazy reporting?
All of it was complicit. All of it. I'll give you an example. Well, first of all, them trying to say that I was crazy is an element that they were covering it up, but also they wouldn't report the things that would go on at the trial. Like I was telling you about the evidence not being allowed to be given to the standby attorney. There was probably 5 or 10 other hearings where weird things like that happen that would never appear in the mainstream media. What the mainstream media would report would be something like this, that, as the underwear bomber walked into the courtroom, he shouted Allahu Akbar, and they would write a whole story on this, and they wouldn't report on the details and the important parts of the hearing. It was a cover-up. Also, when I would go to these hearings, I went to a lot of them. I only missed a couple. There was always a reporter there from the Detroit Free Press. Her name is Teresa Baldas, Baldas. She is actually still there at the Free Press. And I would talk to her. She would go to all the hearings, and me too, and I would too. And I would say, there's a cover-up going on. And she would do an interview with me, and she would say, I'm going to write a story on this. And I would look in the Free Press every day, and there would never be a story. And then the next hearing would come up, and I'd be like, Teresa, where's the story? We did this long interview. My editor scrubbed it and wouldn't let us publish it. And then she'd say, but what's happened in the last month? Can we do another interview? And I'd be like, sure. And I do another interview, and the same thing. The editor would scrub it. And this happened about 5 different times. And then it became a running joke between us. Hey, Teresa, you want to do another interview with me so your editor can scrub it? So it just became a running joke that, the Free Press wouldn't put any stories out of what was going on with me. But and the incident.
Weren't you concerned that perhaps she was reporting back to the FBI or whoever these conspirators were?
No. I mean, I was out there. Okay. Even though I wasn't on the mainstream media, I was all over the alternative media telling my story constantly. Whoever wanted to interview with me, I think I only turned down like 1 or 2 interviews ever. About people that wanted to talk to me. It wasn't very many. So I was all over the place, all over the internet. They knew very well who I was and what I was talking about.
Okay, now you mentioned these other incidents, Sandy Hook and Boston bombing. So now, from your experience, why do you think? Give us what do you see that the average person isn't seeing when they're just turning on the news?
What do I see that they don't see?
Yeah.
Okay. Each incident's a little different. First of all, you have to not listen to the mainstream media. They lie. You have to look at the facts yourself and see what's true and not true and determine it yourself. For instance, let's talk about the Boston bombing a little. Okay. There's no evidence the Zolkar, I can't remember his last name. Anyway, I'll just say the 2 Russian brothers. There's no evidence they dropped any bomb. There's no evidence at all that they did anything except go to the Boston Marathon. We're told there's this video of them dropping off bombs, whatever. It doesn't exist. It wasn't in the trial. Wasn't anywhere. There's security camera footage all over the place there. There's no proof they did anything. And they said there's this video of Zolkar, the younger brother, setting down a backpack next to a tree that supposedly is where the bomb went off, the second bomb. But the tree was still standing. after the explosion. And it was a small tree, maybe like 6 inch trunk. It should have been blown down if the bomb was next to it, if that's really where he set the bomb down. But if you look ahead about 10 feet and 10 feet to the left, next to a mailbox, there was a clear bomb mark on the side of the mailbox, a big black mark, and there was also a black mark on the ground where a bomb did go off. And there are pictures of a woman setting her purse in exactly this spot and walking away just before the explosion. So it's things like this that I look for and I find. And, they killed the one brother, and then the younger brother, they come out with a nonsense story that his throat was cut and he can't talk. I don't know if you remember this. There's no evidence his throat was ever cut. He hides in a boat, and they fire like 200 rounds into the boat to kill him, and then he doesn't die. And when they come out, he wrote a confession on the inside of the boat. To anyone that has ever tried to write on a fiberglass boat, it's about impossible in the dark. And he wrote out this big confession. I mean, what did he have? A felt tip marker he was carrying around when he was escaping? Hey, things like this, they just don't make any sense. They don't make any sense because the story is a lie.
What do you make of stuff like their uncle, Ruslan? Obvious CIA connections.
About what, I'm sorry?
About the two cousins, the two brothers.
In the Boston bombing?
Yeah, and their Uncle Ruslan. He was a CIA agent.
Yeah. Well, what happens a lot of the times, right? What happens a lot of the times, if you're actually looking at these events, is they have either CIA connections or some sort of government contractor connections, and they've had a lot of past contact with the FBI or
right.
CIA. Those, it'll always be something like this. These guys, we were concerned about these guys, and we looked into them a few years ago, but didn't think they were a threat. It's always the same story, something like that. But what happens is, what's really going on is they recruit these guys to be involved in these fake plots. They're fake, false flag, whatever you want to call them, on the promise that they won't be prosecuted for whatever they were brought in to talk to the FBI in the first place for. And that's how they get them involved. It's like a blackmail scheme, if you will. You go perform this little event for us, and we won't prosecute you. You'll see that in near 100% of these cases, where there's some sort of FBI contact. We saw it with the Pulse nightclub shooter in Orlando recently, too. I mean, that's another one. We could go on and on. There's no proof that guy was even in Orlando. The Orlando Pulse nightclub shooter, Omar Mateen, there's no proof anybody was even shot. There's no bodies. What's really laughable about that one is 2 days after the shooting, Orlando hires a new, losing my train of thought, the medical examiner hires a new medical examiner hired on recommendation by law enforcement. Hint, FBI wanted this guy in 2 days after the event. And he's the sole person in charge of identifying and doing the autopsy on Omar Mateen. And he stores the body supposedly in a building all by itself that only he has access to. It's nonsense and defies the imagination. If you look at these events with an open eye and not just accept everything the media and government says is truth, it doesn't make any sense. What's more logical is that there was no body of Omar Mateen, and there was no body of Omar Mateen because it was a fake event. That's more logical. Or the event was theater. There was an event, but it was just a play, if you will, where nobody was hurt. That's what makes the most sense. And I could go on and on. We could talk about these events for days. These are just, a couple things that I'm pointing out.
You might want to take a look. We did a show with Casey Gain Magala, who's an author of a book about the CIA's secret war in Jamaica. Great stuff. This guy does some great work. And he just happens to be from Boston. Cambridge.
What's his name?
Casey Gain Magala. Or just Casey Gain, you could find him. It turns out he knew some of these guys. There was another case in Boston where a friend who was a pot dealer who was friends with the Zarkov brothers. Is that their name? Zarkov? Whatever. You know who we're talking about. The Serbian guys, whatever.
Yeah, Zolkar and Tamerlan. I can't think of their last name, though. Zarnev,
right.
Zarnev, that's what it is.
Yeah, and there was actually a murder of this pot dealer, and where they almost beheaded him. They almost cut his head off. And some of the people involved in that were that witness that got shot in the FBI's office, you know, and then those FBI agents wind up falling out of a helicopter. You know? There's a lot of stuff in that case, man, that is just so overwhelmingly ridiculous. But you take the step further to think that they're all actors and that no one's actually getting killed, no one's being injured, and they're all in it?
No, I hate to say that because each one's a little different.
Yeah,
sometimes they kill people. They do. You know, 9/11, they killed people.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And that was another event, 9/11. But sometimes they don't, like the Virginia reporter shooting. Nobody died there. Sandy Hook, nobody died there. And, you know, sometimes there's a combination where they say so many people were killed, but maybe only a few were killed. So each one's a little different. I hate to just say actors because then people think, oh, this guy's crazy. This Kurt guy thinks everybody's an actor. But there are crisis actors. I mean, you can Google it, and there are legitimate organizations, that's all they do, are hire out crisis actors for these government-type drills. And then what they do, the government will just say, the government and the media will portray it as a real event, when in fact it was just a drill. And that's what they're doing since 2012 when their propaganda was legalized. So, but sometimes they do kill people. You know, they'll kill patsies just to shut them up sometimes.
Yeah, we know for a fact. Yeah, those FBI agents. And it always struck me too, is with the Zarkov brothers, that the FBI admits that they interviewed them in their home. You know, they interviewed these guys, and you would think when all this was going on that the agents, the physical agents who actually did the interview, who did the investigation, when all this was going on, would say, "Gee whiz, those two guys in that picture look just like the guys I interviewed." You know what I mean? Like, how could? Right.
That's the case where they said we need the public to help identify them, right? And they put right. See, it's just nonsense. Yeah. If you look at these events and think about them clearly and logically, you can see that they're lying. It's just hard for some people to come out and believe that the government and the mainstream media lies to them constantly. So, you know, they're just in denial, and it's hard to break through that denial. But once you've done it, you know, and someone like me that's been involved in one where there can be no denying these sort of things happen, it's easy to see through the nonsense and the lies. It really is.
I got you.
The lies are very obvious if you have an open mind looking at these events.
So what do you do now? You just like retired?
Yeah, I don't do much of anything, really. I just, I like to garden and go to the gym, go to the beach, and just stay up on false flags and watch my sports.
And you just live off your savings?
That's about it. Yeah. Well, no, we have investments.
Okay, that makes sense.
Live off investments, yeah.
All right, Kurt Haskell, thank you so much, my friend. And thank you for going along with me, too. There's just so much in your story. I really wanted to get every little bit. But I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
And you have anything coming up you want to plug? Any other appearances or anything?
No, I'm not doing much these days at all. Just, occasional appearances on shows. But, if anyone wants to add me on Facebook, when some of these events happen, you can see me go through them and point out why they're fake. And some people enjoy that. When the next fake event happens, you can follow along. So if anyone wants to do that, you can add me on Facebook.
Yeah, and on Facebook, it's Kurt Richard Haskell. So you could find him that way real easy. I can't imagine there's another one.
Yep.
Kurt, thank you so much, my friend.
No problem.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, there you have it, Kurt Haskell. A lot of interesting stuff. I'll give him credit. Okay, so I don't know what we're going to do with the show. I don't know if it's going to be in the members section or it's going to be on a Friday night. If it is a Friday night, I'll probably add another little 10 minutes after this. Keep in mind, guys, we need your support. The members section, OppermanReport.com, to keep the show alive. We took that trip down to California to cover Bernie, to tape with Hank, and we spent a lot of money. Okay, so we need to recover those kind of funds. So if you can please become members, OppermanReport.com, or if you donations, we're not ashamed to take donations. OppermanReport@gmail.com through PayPal. Also, too, if you want to advertise, we just picked up a whole nother network, and so if you want to advertise on OppermanReport.com, we can play your ad over Awake Radio US like 24 hours a day on different shows, and that replays to now we're replaying like on 10 stations on Friday night and 10 stations on Saturday, plus the ads play in the members section. So if you want to help support the show, or you want to get a lot of exposure, believe me, you have no idea how many emails I get in a day from people. Hey, I listened to your show on iTunes. I listened to your show on iHeart. I listened to it on Stitcher. So even people don't realize. They don't even know that we're on live on the air. They're listening to it on all these replays and stuff all over the place. iTunes, TuneIn.com. We just got, earlier this week, 9,000. We hit 9,000 subscribers on Spreaker. And that was like 5 days ago. And now already we're up to 9,111, something like that. So we're picking up new subscribers every single day. On YouTube, we pick up 10, 20 new subscribers every single day. So if you want to advertise, you will get a lot of coverage, believe me. If it's something like a website, an international website, trust me, you will get a ton of hits. I can guarantee you that, because I know I get a ton of hits, man. I get a ton of emails every day, more than I want. I think I've made it clear. Okay, all right, guys, I love you. And if it's let's see, if it's a Friday night at 7 p.m., reboot. Okay, good night.